Jacob. Good morning.
Hello, hello. So good to see you.
Good to
Be
see
on
you
your
too.
podcast.
I'm
Ooh.
sorry?
And to be on your podcast, or what do we call this? This is not a
No,
podcast.
this
This
is
is
a
a
YouTube channel. The
YouTube
pod
channel.
the podcast is another project.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
That's
Yes.
I'm actually thinking of maybe converting these interviews, like using just the audio and make it
Uh-huh.
also a podcast.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
but that's a yes. I haven't
You haven't
decided
said
to.
yes to yet. Yeah.
No.
Okay. Okay.
Um,
Well, thank you
anyway.
so much for having me here. It's an honor to be
Oh,
interviewed by you.
thank you for coming. So we're gonna start as always with you introducing yourself to my audience. Who
Okay.
are you, Jacob?
Always a good question. Who am I? Let's see. So lots of identities I hold here. I'm a father of a wonderful 9-year-old boy named Auden, a husband to Jennifer Spitzer, who's an Ithaca College English professor, a son to my parents and brother to my brother, an uncle. I've got 3 lovely nephews that I adore down in Jersey. And let's see, who else am I? I'm also, well, for years I was a professional actor and singer and dancer. I did that from the age of about 10 years old till about 28, 29. I was doing that. That was my real focus. I went to undergraduate college for that and studied theater and performed around the world. And it was great and also quite hard to make a living, a consistent living and pay the rent. And I saw that I had a real pull towards issues around mental health. And I was in my own therapy at the time and really liked and found it really useful. And so I was like, maybe I want to be a therapist. And particularly a social worker. I really liked the idea of social work because it has a real kind of social justice framework to the idea of interacting with people. And so I went to Hunter School of Social Work and became a social worker. So I'm now a social worker, and I've been working at Ithaca College in the counseling department for about 8.5 years. And
8, you said 8.5?
Yeah. And just recently, like very, very recently, like Monday, what's today? Thursday?
Thursday.
So on Monday, I started my private practice. I have left Ithaca College. I loved Ithaca College, but it was time to go, and began my own venture. I said yes to private practice.
So you jumped straight to the question. What if I said yes?
Well, that's just one of the yeses. That's one of the yeses. There's lots of.
Well, that's
There's another
wonderful.
Another one I had in mind.
Okay. Before we explore the what if I say yes or yeses that you've said, let's just tell the audience how we met, or how do we know each other?
Sure.
It hasn't to be, I mean, I don't remember exactly the time when we met.
I do. I think I remember.
You do?
I think, yes.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it was in the Science Center in Ithaca.
Oh, okay.
And we were both with our kids. And I don't know if maybe they were playing together. There was somehow that we started talking to each other. And I remember, well, you introduced yourself and said your name, and then I think I pronounced it incorrectly. I said Lucia, and you were like, "Oh, that's okay. I like it when people make that mistake." And I was like, "Well, that's because my mother was an opera singer and she loved Lucia di Lammermoor, and so that's why I always think that's how you pronounce your name." So I remember that conversation. I remember you also saying that you did translations.
Mhm.
And at that time I was working for a company that was doing translations. So we started talking about that. Okay.
Mhm.
And then we had kids that were of similar age, and yeah. And then both our partners work at Ithaca College, and
Mhm.
so that continued, and we've
Wow,
had
Jacob,
breakfasts together and lunches together, and yeah. I remember
excellent
something.
memory.
Not normally. I'm not known for this, but you make an impression. Yeah, you do.
It's funny. Now that you said, I remember, I think the place, the exact place in the Science Center when we were having the conversation about the opera and my name.
Where was it the second floor? Were we?
Second floor,
Think so.
outside the room where you did experiments.
Yes.
So outside of it, there's some kind of, I haven't been there in a while, but
Yeah.
we were around that place.
Yep. Yep.
And so I must have told you that when you said that about your mom and Lucia de Lammermoor, that's why my dad
That's right.
chose my name.
That's
and we
right.
were like,
That's
oh.
right. That's right. That's right. Yes.
Yes.
So that's why you weren't bothered by my mispronunciation.
Because when they say Lucia,
Mm.
it's like they're talking to another person.
Oh yeah.
But so my name is Lucia.
Yeah.
But if you say Lucia, then it goes back to why my name is Lucia, which is my dad loves this sextet at the opera,
Oh.
Lucia de Lammermoor. And so with Lucia, I'm fine because it has that connection to my father.
Yes.
But Lucia is like, who's that?
Who is this person? Who is this person? Ah, and that sextet is gorgeous. I agree with your father. Yeah. Mhm.
Well, so that's how we met.
Yes.
Very nice. I completely forgot about that part. Yes. Well, thank you so much for reminding me.
Oh,
It was
yes.
lovely.
It was
So anyway,
the highlight of my day that day. I remember coming home and telling Jen, I met this awesome woman. Yeah.
who knew that years later I was going to be interviewing you? And
That's right. We'd be YouTube stars.
okay, so because we have known each other for quite a while now, almost a decade,
Mhm.
and I know a few things about you, I said this is the perfect person to come to my channel and talk about a moment in your life when you said, you asked the question, maybe you didn't ask the question, someone else told me. I actually didn't ask the question, but the point is, it's you think or you don't think. The what if I say yes, but then you
Mm.
say yes. So even if you skip the what if I say yes, you said yes. That's the important part.
Yeah.
Tell us what you chose to talk about today, because I don't know, and it will be a surprise to me.
Sure. Yeah, well, I think that idea of the question is interesting, because usually, like the yeses that are most profound in our life, usually there's a big question beforehand of what if I say yes, and right, all that fear and doubt that can come up when we're thinking about saying yes. So yeah, there was a couple, a couple ideas that I was like, which one should I talk about? One was definitely that original thought of changing from being an actor for so long to becoming a social worker. That was a what if I say yes to that for a number of years. I was working in New York City, and Hunter School of Social Work is on the Upper East Side on 68th Street. Wait, actually, it's now moved up to the hundreds. And I was doing one of my temp jobs up there. As an actor, you're always just trying to make money and survive. And well, my brain just went like this, split, because I remember right around then, one of my temp jobs. Let's see, I was Donald Trump Jr.'s personal assistant for
No.
yes,
No.
for about 3 months. Yes, there's stories there. Yes, we won't go. to that. I had never actually laid eyes on the guy because he was always in Europe, and so I would just answer the phone for him and have to talk to him and whatever. It was a horrid, horrid, horrid place to work. I had to go to Trump Tower. It was like, I'm sorry to even mention any of their names, and ugh, when I just shower after talking about him and the situation. Anyway, it wasn't that temp job, but it was another one shortly thereafter where I was always walking by the Hunter School of Social Work, and I would look at it and be like, oh, that's interesting. And what is social work? I didn't even know what it was. I like remember looking it up online, and I, you know, for years I was like looking at it and then started thinking like, oh, that sounds kind of cool. And oh my gosh, I haven't, you know, had an acting job for 6 months, and I'm going to pay my rent, and you know. And then I actually started dating Jen, and both of her parents were social workers, and they started talking about it a lot. And Jen's dad went to Hunter School of Social Work and just loved it and had this amazing experience. And so there we go. That eventually I was like, I said yes to that, which is pretty huge, huge shift in my life. And it was also, you know, I was dating Jen. She was an academic, and academics, as you know, have to kind of move wherever there's a job. And there ain't too much acting work outside of the big cities, right? New York City, LA, Chicago. So I wanted a job that I could do anywhere. And so social work was that. And but so I said yes to that. But the real yes, I want to say it, I think why the real reason why I got drawn to social work was from an earlier period of my life where that kind of gave me a calling or a pull towards helping people struggling with their mental health. And that, so when I was in my first couple years of college, I experienced a pretty severe depression. I went into my own, it was, a couple years of just bad news, you know, the whole classic depression symptoms of not being able to get out of bed, like not showering much, not taking care of myself, just really, really painful time. And for a whole mix of reasons, you know, family stuff going on, a relationship had broken up. And then probably a bit of a genetic predisposition. There's a lot of mental health stuff in my family. And I was really, really, really struggling with it, really lost. And I decided to go to the counseling center at my college, which at that point, like going to therapy, you know, this is the mid-90s. I'm a man. It was not in my culture to like go and do that. It was like, you know, I had to, I remember the therapy office was down in a basement, and I was really happy that it was like, you know, I could sneak in there and
with your hoodie on, no?
with a hoodie on, like nobody's gonna see me. And so I went, and so that was the first, I would say, you know, what if I say yes, right? What if I go and actually tell somebody that I'm having issues, that this is not, I'm not doing well.
But wait.
Yeah.
So before, with all that background, what made you actually think of going to see someone if it was not something that men at that point in your life, or the family, or in your environment, if it was not a thing that people did at that time, what made you say, I guess I better go to the counselor's office?
Well, I would say, I mean, there's a couple of things. It wasn't like it was totally foreign to me. You know, I had watched, you know, Woody Allen movies and heard him talking about going to therapy, and it was like, and there were some people in my life who had good experiences. But I'd say the real driving force was I was in horrible pain, and I just lost. And didn't know what to do about it. Just, you know, I was reaching out for whatever might help.
Mhm.
And so desperation breeds, you know, okay, I'll do that, you know,
Mhm.
even if it seems a little out of character, out of my norm, I'm gonna try it.
Mhm.
Um, and so I went, and I have to say, at first it wasn't like magic. It was, I liked the therapist I had, but it just didn't, it wasn't really wasn't really changing things for me. And I went through a couple different therapists before I eventually worked with this guy named Paul. I wish I remembered his last name, because I'd love to thank him.
All these people inside the counselor's office at the college.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And I don't know, for whatever reason, we just kind of clicked. Um, and I think I appreciated at that point in my life a bit more of a directive, like, do this, do that.
Mhm.
I needed a bit of that right then, where the other therapists had been a bit more good listeners, but weren't giving me much direction.
Mhm.
And his stuff was really simple. It was just about, hey, well, the big first one that like jumped at me was kind of the idea of fake it till you make it.
Mhm.
Right. Just put one thing on your calendar each day that you know has the potential to give you some pleasure.
Mhm.
Right. Even if you're not feeling any pleasure right now in your life, everything feels bleak, but you know that that one thing used to give you some pleasure. There was
Mhm.
something enjoyable.
Mhm.
And we would literally like write down, all right, what's that one thing going to be on Monday? What makes sense to go do? And then I would go and do it. I would say yes to doing, even though my brain was saying, I just want to stay in bed. I don't want to do any of this. I want to, it sounds miserable to do what it is, whatever that was. But I would force myself, and I would do it. I would say yes to it. I remember often the thing was just walking to this park nearby and looking at these geese that were in a little pond.
Mhm.
And you know, I had written down, you know, I often liked looking at animals and being in nature. And so I would do that. And it helped. That was the big thing. I realized, like, if I kind of forced myself, even though I did not feel like it, and then we built on that, of course. And all right, I'm going to force myself to kind of put on all the structures. I'm going to shower, even though I don't feel like it. I'm going to brush my teeth, even though I don't feel like it. I'm going to get out of bed, set you know, a sleep schedule that actually works. I'm going to say yes to that, even though everything inside my body is saying, hell no, I don't want to do this.
Mhm.
I'm going to do it, and I'm going to be, you know, I'm going to stick to that.
Mhm.
Um, it really helped. And I'd say in some ways those, you know, that real simple stuff was some of the most important yeses I've said in my life
Mhm.
when I least wanted to.
Mhm.
Most want to just like bury my head under the covers. Um, but you know, without that kind of direction and my willingness to say yes, in spite of everything pulling me down.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm scared to think where I would have been without that kind of help. And so that eventually drove me to wanting to do this work. And obviously it gets much more complex than just doing one thing and going to see some geese. But I think it is an essential first part when you're in that real dismal place of, yeah, just saying yes and trying something.
Mhm. It's funny that you mentioned the geese because yesterday when I was driving down to take Maya to school, and we can always see the lake on the right side, Cayuga Lake,
Mhm.
and it looks so beautiful. Close to the edge, it looked like a mirror, and I was
Mhm.
wondering what that was. So then, after dropping her off, I went to the lake, and I walked and I took pictures and a video. It was
Mm.
lovely, but it was freezing.
Oh,
That
yeah.
mirror, it was actually a thin layer of ice that I have
Mhm.
never seen before. Like I
Mhm.
either see the part that freezes, that freezes,
Mhm. Mhm.
freeze, with snow on top, or I don't,
Mm.
or I didn't see, I just see the water. But yesterday there was this thin layer of ice that looked
Beautiful.
beautiful. But then, so I'm freezing there with my camera out, and then I see what I thought were dogs. There were geese just swimming
Mhm.
peacefully in that.
Wow. In the right next to the ice.
Yes, like
Mm.
so peacefully. And
Mhm.
somehow just looking at nature and just being in a place like that suddenly takes you out of everything you woke up with, all your
Yeah.
thoughts, all your worries, like, oh, the geese can swim so peace. Just that is
Mhm.
so helpful for the rest of your day. So I
Absolutely.
completely understand.
Yeah. Right? Because
Okay.
nature just keeps on going. It's
Yes.
the geese don't just stay in bed and put the covers over their head.
Or say, I know it's too cold
It's too
to swim
cold.
today.
It's too cold. Oh, they're geese. They go swim. Yeah.
So that was the one, a very important yes that you
Yeah.
said. A second one was going to Hunter
Yeah.
School of Social
Changing
Work.
career path. Yeah.
Then you started working as a social worker,
Yeah.
counselor. And now a huge yes is this one you mentioned in your introduction that you're
Yes.
opening your own practice. Is that how it's called?
Yes. I'm now an entrepreneur. Yes. I got my
So,
own business. Well, so far so good. I mean, it's just starting. Uh
uh-huh.
um so I have 5 clients this week and a little scared about paying mortgage at the end of the month. But from all my fellow therapist friends in town, I'm told I shouldn't have any issue.
I mean, because
Well,
I can think of something, but I wanted to check first with you. Why do they
uh,
say you shouldn't
there
worry?
is a tidal wave of need right now. I mean, we are in a mental health
Mhm,
pandemic.
mhm,
We've had multiple pandemics going on, and yeah, the need is so great. And
mhm,
definitely saw that at the counseling center. We were always, just struggling to keep up with the need, and never could see students as regularly as we wanted to because there was just so much need.
mhm,
um, the even before the pandemic, uh, people have been really struggling, particularly young people.
mhm,
And there's all sorts of theories as to why it's gotten worse in the past 20 years. I tend to agree that social media has played a big part in this.
mhm.
Um, Constantly seeing everybody's like, you know, I'm having the best
Perfect
day of my
life.
life. Yeah, it's brutal for all of us. We go into this, compare and despair circle, right? We're comparing our lives and then despairing.
Right
We're
now, you
not.
just froze.
Oh, did I
Okay, you're
freeze?
back. No,
Oh,
but it was my internet connection. I think
okay.
people are gonna, if someone watches all my interviews, they're gonna say, "Oh my God, change providers."
Uh, oh well.
Sorry.
I was just saying, yeah, it just gives so much opportunity for this kind of comparing our lives to others and then despairing that we're not, living their life.
Mhm,
Um, and yeah, with kids and adolescents and young adults, I think they're that much more susceptible to that. And they didn't have, 30 years of their life pre-internet that they could like
mhm.
draw upon of like, you know, not knowing that
Yep.
existed. And but yeah, there's a real, yeah, just a tidal wave of need. And sadly, yeah, the suicide rates went way up during pandemic, overdose rates went way up. That isolation,
Mhm.
while, I very much agree with many of the health precautions that were taken and
Mhm.
still, I think should be taken in some ways, to deal with the virus. But it also has had profound effects on people's isolation and mental health.
But isn't that super weird that at a moment in time when we're connected with the entire world through the internet, you can feel so alone and so sad and so bad just because
Yeah,
you are not interacting face to face with someone. Like
yeah,
just that simple connection
yeah.
poof, goes away, and it doesn't matter if you're Facebook or YouTube or Instagram or whatever.
No,
It's so
I know.
horrible.
Yeah. Well, I think it's because, I mean, there's lots of reasons, but one reason that strikes me is that it like fills the initial need of contact. It's like you go on Facebook and it's because you want to see what's happening, or you kind of want that dopamine hit of like something new, right? But it fills that need of like knowing what's happening in your world with your friends and your family, but it doesn't actually fill the need of actually connecting and being vulnerable with someone else and really learning about them and having a dialogue. It's it's just the very surface level, and it just leaves us feeling so hollow.
It's like a fix, no? When
Yeah, it's a
us to
drug
get your
fix.
fix, but it doesn't solve the core problem.
No,
Mhm.
no. Yeah, it's totally a fix. Yeah.
Now I'm thinking with your acting career, acting and dancing career.
It was tap dancing. I was not good at anything else but tap dancing.
Well, tap dancing is quite a
It's a
skill.
dance. It's a dance. Yeah,
Yes, and it's not easy.
sure. Some people
So
think I'm a
that
dancer. That means I'm flexible, and I'm not. I can move my feet well.
your feet work very well,
Yeah,
not the rest of the body.
not so much. No, not so much.
Well, it doesn't matter. So, with that experience and with that background, I'm sure you have found ways to integrate that into your work because, I mean, just being an actor means you become someone else. You're you have to develop empathy and you have to develop these skills that let you be someone else to then transmit something to the audience. So what you're doing is kind of related. Do you find that connection, and have you thought about that?
You're so wise. Yes, yeah, absolutely. There's lots of crossover. Um, and yeah, it was interesting how, in grad school, they were talking about things. I was like, oh, this is exactly what I learned in acting school. Um,
Like what?
lots
Give us an example.
the concepts of being in the moment with people,
Mhm.
not being stuck in your head and kind of responding to what's happening right then, not having this fixed idea of how this, with acting, it's how the scene should be played. You don't want to be stuck in that. With therapy, it's all right, not being stuck in the idea of how the session is going to go, or my agenda for how I think this needs to go today.
Mhm.
um, it's, you want to follow the client's lead as to where they're going, what's important to them, right? There's a phrase in social work is, always start where the client is, right? You want to start there. You don't want to be like, all right, this is what we're going to talk about. Um, and so much of it is staying in the moment.
Mhm.
And I think there's also an aspect of, it's not acting like faking. Sometimes people get that misconstrued about being an actor as well. It's kind of tapping into whatever you have the sense as to the part of me that is going to be most useful for this person I'm talking to right now.
Mhm,
And letting that part of me kind of show up today, which is very similar to acting. All right, what's the part of me that I'm going to have show up today to engage with this scene and this play and this character? The other big one, and I just saw this online, there's kind of interested in taking it. There's an improv class for therapists that I just saw online that's being taught by somebody from Second City, one of the big places that
Is that the one in
do improv.
Chicago, Second
Yeah,
City?
exactly. I think they also have one in New York now, but yeah. But right, there's this fundamental concept in improv it's called yes and, right? Which goes perfectly with your show. But it's all about like never saying no, never denying what's happening, right? What's happening is happening. And I'm going to say yes to it, and I'm going to add to it. I'm going to add my contribution, and then my partner will add something, and they're doing a yes and as well, and then I'm responding to that. And so we're constantly building. We're not going to pretend that that somebody didn't just cough in the back of the audience and left, right? We're going to integrate that into what's happening, right? Or that a light fell down. Like, we can't just ignore that just happened. We have to say yes, and now that's part of our scene, right? Or in therapy, I'm not going to ignore that this person just said, maybe they were talking about their relationship with their mother, but then all of a sudden they've mentioned something about how they're feeling about their job, and we're not going to just ignore that. We're going to incorporate that in some way.
Wow, that sounds so interesting.
Maybe it's not. Yeah, I'm not always a pro at it, definitely, but yeah. That's the
but when
idea.
you say it gets misconstrued, the part of acting, it's not like you're not, the acting doesn't come in the, oh, you're looking so interested in what the client or you call them clients or patients or
everybody does different.
of
Yeah.
what you don't act like you're interested in what he or the person is saying. Is you tap
It's
into you.
true. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think if you're a decent therapist, yeah, it's not faking, all right?
Yeah.
You're trying to, in the same way as with acting, as the person's talking, letting it go into your body, and oftentimes you're just relating, your body has a reaction to what's being said, or a feeling that's going on. Sometimes if that empathy is blocked for whatever reason, sometimes I do have to do, all right, what's something in my life that's similar to what this person is talking about, so that I can have more of an understanding and more empathy for what they're going through. Yeah.
And the being in the present part is also so interesting to me, because specifically for interviewing, I was listening to a podcast with this lovely interview, Elizabeth Day. She was interviewing this, well, she's a young woman now who was from Syria. She had to flee Syria. She was a professional, well, she wanted to become a professional swimmer. She wanted to swim in the Olympics. Anyway, she has a lovely story. There's a Netflix movie about her and her sister. But one of the things her story is super traumatic, like the things they went through to get to where they are. So, but with the movie out, she finds herself reliving the trauma every time she has to do an interview. So on one side, she says she's happy to do it because now she's working with the UN and with this program for refugees, and she's trying to make this to bring this topic to light, so everybody can understand what the plight of the refugees is. But on the other side, every time she finishes an interview, she physically gets ill and has to kind of rest for a while. But one of the things she said is, I hate it when some interviewers come to me with a list of questions they ask the first question, I'm answering something super, like very intimate or very deep or very traumatic, very hurtful. And they are not listening to me. They're
Mm.
looking at the second question they need to ask me.
Yeah.
So when they're not in the moment, when I'm not being heard, I just stop the interview.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, it's, if you're not in the present, if you're
Yeah.
not listening, which is super important, then why bother? No, why?
Yeah. Why are we doing this?
Mhm,
Yeah. And then I can imagine that even makes the re-traumatization worse,
mhm,
right? Because that's often what's happening in trauma is we're alone with a horrible situation.
mhm,
And then yeah, if you're in an interview talking about it and the person's not listening, once again, she's alone with a horrible situation.
mhm,
And it's not this kind of back and forth and the person's really there with her. They're just kind of
mhm,
stuck in their own path.
mhm.
Yeah.
Now, for someone who um, doesn't know much about this world, what would be the difference between a social worker, a counselor, a therapist, a psychologist, a psychiatrist? Like, can you give us the rundown, like the basics on what the
Sure.
differences are?
Yeah, I mean, very broadly, um, and this has shifted over the years, but so psychiatrists can prescribe medication. Nobody else can. They're MDs. They went to medical school. They used to do talk therapy, as well as prescribe medications. And occasionally you'll still find one that does, but almost none of them do that anymore, because of a variety. It's kind of the insurance company's fault that happened, actually.
Ah,
So so now people who provide therapy, talk therapy, are social workers, yeah, licensed professional counselors, licensed mental health clinicians, licensed marriage and family therapists. There's a lot of these like acronyms, and psychologists. Um, and we all come at the work from a vaguely different training places.
mhm,
Usually we've all worked in agencies together, and there's a lot of joint knowledge and sharing and case conferences and professional development that we're all doing together, and it's often very similar to each other.
mhm, mhm,
So in the long run, often we're very, very, very similar.
mhm,
There are definitely differences in kind of focus, but and each of them have them slightly different. The thing that's different with social workers is our original training isn't necessarily usually in doing kind of individual therapy. We're that comes later on in the training. It's often more from a systemic place. And so many social workers will work in nonprofits or in unions or in government. And then, some will focus more on working with groups, community organizing, and then some focus really in mental health.
mhm,
And so there's a real array, whereas like a licensed mental health counselor or marriage and family therapist, really from the beginning, they're starting from, all right, I'm just going to focus on counseling and therapy. But kind of all of us have to, with slight differences, study for about, 6 years underneath, a supervisor that's training us in therapy and in facilities where we're doing therapy all the time, before you can kind of branch out on your own and do it solo, like I'm doing.
mhm,
So yeah, I mean, definitely there's little shifts in kind of focus and perspective, but that even happens within, you'll have a licensed mental health counselor that has one philosophy and one kind of theoretical orientation. It's very different than another
mhm,
licensed mental health counselor. And
mhm.
I don't know, does that answer the
Yeah,
question?
so this is what I got. A very basic difference is um, talk therapy and where all of you are,
Yeah,
and psychiatrists,
yeah,
prescription medication, and they are MDs.
yeah.
Now, within all these, below the umbrella of talk therapy,
Hmm.
You mentioned at the beginning that when you were walking by and you were kind of playing with the idea of social work and would it be interesting to study that? You mentioned the social justice part.
Yeah,
Is that
yeah.
what you mean when you say that you work in agencies, like you start from a broader
Yeah, it starts
perspective?
more from a macro perspective with social work. Yeah, your first courses in social work school are social policy, and looking at, yeah, social policy through past couple hundred years in the United States, and up through welfare reform, and how has this affected people's, really looking at the systems and what's affected people's kind of material lives, and the challenges that people are facing, not just internally but externally, and through these systems. And we're really looking at all the isms of power, of racism, sexism, homophobia, and really that's kind of where the initial emphasis is, and the initial training is. And then everybody kind of picks their own path. And when I first joined social work school, I was not entirely sure. I just wanted to do mental health. I was also, maybe I felt very passionate about, a lot of different things I was thinking about. But it seemed, with my past, the clearest thing that was speaking to me was mental health.
And now when you start that work, when you become a counselor, a social worker, and you start working on that, do you get to choose what age group you're gonna work with? Or is like whatever comes, you just take it and figure it out?
Well, in grad school, how most of them work is they just throw you into your first internship. You have no say. You just kind of go and you do whatever they tell you to, because they treat you like you don't know anything. You're going to try this, and everybody has their idea of what they want, but no, you're going to do it. Which in some ways was actually really good for me, because my first experience was working with veterans who had recently returned from Iraq and Afghanistan. And it wasn't what I would have initially chosen. But I found it to be a really profound experience. And I learned a ton doing that. And yeah, just really valued it. But yeah, as you get later on in your career, then you can kind of focus for what age groups, what populations you want to work with.
So at Ithaca College, you were obviously working with college students, but
Yep.
now in your own practice, what are you choosing to do?
Right now, I'm working with 18 and over. That I might budge down a little bit, because I'm seeing in the community there is a need for more people to work with adolescents. I originally worked with little kids. That was actually my second field placement, was in the
How little?
Oh, very little. I worked with down to 4 years old, and little ones. Yeah. Which I loved. I just often felt frustrated, because I was like, the work often felt like is with their parents and not with them. And, oftentimes it would be, this kid is the problem. And I was like, this kid is not the problem. And I think you can do great work with kids, and there's some people that are just so gifted at it. And I thought I was good at it, but I do feel more of a calling to a little bit older. So we'll see. I might budge down into lower adolescents, because I really do like working with 12, 13-year-olds as well. It gets a little trickier when you're working with that age, because there's a lot more people that you need to be in contact with, right? There's usually the schools that you're involved with, the parents, sometimes doctors, and there's more coordination. Yeah.
So right now you have five
clients. Yeah.
5 clients. So when I ask you if you call them clients or patients, or what's the deal with that? How do you decide what to call them?
I don't know the full history of it, but patients was the original term, and and some people can feel that that's, you know, it's kind of medicalizing the entire thing, that these are, you know, sick or ill people that need help.
Going back to there's something wrong with myself, then I become a
Yeah.
patient.
Yeah, versus client, which can, for some people, it feels like it's giving them more agency, feeling more, I don't know. I honestly don't like either term. I think client sounds like kind of cold and like, I don't know, you're going to like rent a car or something. But patient feels like, yeah, it feels like, oh, you're the patient. I'm the, you know, the clinician. It just feels like a power differential that feels yucky. I don't know. I kind of just want to call us humans working on stuff together. I've got some knowledge. I got some things to offer. You have some things to offer. You have some knowledge. We'll come together and yeah, help.
So right now you have 5 humans. you're
5
working with.
humans. 5 humans. Yes.
Yes.
Beautiful humans. Yes.
We may need to keep thinking about a new word to coin. But humans
Client, human. I don't know. Combine it. I don't know.
I wanted to ask you something else when you said when we're talking about social media and college students and all that,
Mhm.
and all this need that they have. I was also thinking that maybe the silver lining of all this is that it's becoming something for the new generations, like going to therapy. It's becoming, what's the word? The stigma.
Yeah.
So without the stigma, how do you say that?
Destigmatized.
Destigmatized. And so, which is completely different from when we were growing up, which was the basic equation was there's something wrong with you, you're kind of crazy, you need to go to talk to a psychologist, psychiatrist, whatever, and it didn't
Sure.
matter. It was like, he has
Sneak
to
into
go
the
or she has
basement
to,
with the hoodie. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
dark glasses.
Yes.
So in a way, they're gonna grow up knowing that it's good to do this.
Mhm.
Maybe it's not for everybody, like nothing is for everybody,
Totally.
but it's more acceptable. It's more, it's something that more people do. Therefore, there's less stigma, and
Mhm.
so hopefully, there's gonna be the
Yeah,
silver lining of all these new generations.
totally. Yeah. And yeah, social media has done some great work in destigmatizing
Mhm.
therapy. I mean, you know, TikTok, for all of its problems, oftentimes I've seen videos that are, you know, saying, I went
Really?
to my therapist, and yeah, and it's just become a thing. It's like it's not such a thing to go to therapy anymore. Now, there's also lots of garbage advice for mental health on TikTok, and people who are, you know, they're pretending that they have credentials that don't. And but yeah, but I think, you know, with everything, right, there's two sides, and I think
Mhm.
social media has done a great job at destigmatizing,
Mhm.
reaching out for help. Yeah.
Well, very nice. The last thing before we go to the no moment
Oh, that's right. The nose.
is thinking thinking of this interview today. I was going back to what I was telling Maya a few days ago about therapy, and I said, look, it helped me tremendously
Mm.
because, and so I gave her three times when I had to go to therapy that allowed me to be here now
Mhm.
with her as my daughter and Carlos as my husband. Said, when I was in college and I finished all my courses, the 4 years of classes, then I had to decide if I wanted to present an exam or like a written exam or write a short thesis or a thesis. So I chose the thesis. And so I had to figure out what I was going to write about. I didn't have a clue. So I started playing with some ideas. I wanted a professor to be my advisor. That didn't work out. And I think he was the one who actually suggested that I went and talked to his wife, which was also another professor, psychology professor. We loved her. So I started working with her. And so every time we met, it was like a therapy session for me without me even knowing that I was doing that. Until at some point she said, you know what? I'm going to suggest that you call this place. So she was in the psychoanalysis school, so for tradition. So she said, you call this place. It's full of psychoanalysts. Whoever picks up the phone is whoever you're going to get. So you talk to that person, make an appointment, and try it out. Because we cannot make progress on your thesis if you keep coming here wanting to have these conversations with me about all the other things that don't have anything to do. I mean, they have to do, but they don't have technically anything to do but you're working. So then I said, I went and I stayed there for almost 2 years with this psychoanalyst. At some point in the middle of those 2 years, I figured that what I wanted to write about is this. So I kind of put, turned the light on me. And I said, the process of understanding me can be also transferred to what a student who finishes classes and has to write a thesis has to do. So I started focusing on how one becomes a subject researcher while doing a thesis, while doing research. And so that was my whole thesis about it. I mean, in the end, it took me 6 years to finish it.
Takes whatever time it takes.
It was lovely, and it was an original work, and I was very good with it. So I said that was the first time, and it helped me like go through that that bump in my life. And I said, solve that. Took me time, but it was fine. The second time was when my twin brother had some issues, and he started therapy, but then the psychoanalyst, he at some point requested family therapy. So we started that, and we survived that part. And then the third time was before I came to the United States in 2000, because I couldn't fathom how I was going to leave my family and my twin brother in crisis to start a new life in a different country. I said, but I had to do it. So I went back and I talked and I cried and I did everything I had to do. And then I came to the United States. And because I came here, then I found I fell in love with your dad, and then we had you and you are here, and this is wonderful. So anyway.
It can be so helpful in those moments of transition when we're feeling lost and
But I understand that this is not for everybody. I mean,
no, and not every therapist is for everybody. It often will take a few different therapists before, people can find somebody in a style that works for them. So much of it is the relationship that where the real work happens.
This is a very intimate relationship that you establish with someone who you're going to talk about your very intimate things and
your most intimate details, and where you feel most vulnerable, and that you're not going to just do that with anybody. It has to be the right person, the right connection.
Okay, so now it's a time to go to the what if I say no?
No.
What is a moment, or what are moments in your life when you said, no, this time I'm going to say no?
Right. Those can be really hard too. Because those often, at least for me, the struggle often with saying no is about hurting somebody else's feelings or letting somebody down, or what's going to happen if I say no to me, or how will I be viewed? So yeah, I wouldn't say no like big clear one popped out for me. Also, because I forgot that you were going to ask me that question, so I'm still like, but there's a couple little ones that, and yeah, I mean, I think, and they all have that wrapped up into it. So one that's just jumping out to me right now is when I was a professional actor and doing that all the time. There was one project I had gotten involved in, a film. I was very excited to be cast in it. And I started, the director was having some rehearsal processes beforehand, and then we were going to start shooting. And I did these rehearsals, and it just all felt horrible. Just, it was, I won't say the name of the people involved, but it was just, the script was like a mess. It was just the character I was playing. I didn't know what, I didn't understand it at all. I had no grasp on what was happening. The other actors I was working with, I just was not connecting with at all. I just felt, and I just was agonizing about this thing. And because it was exciting, you know, I'd got cast in a film. It doesn't happen all the time. And I was just going back and forth, like, I don't want to do this. Every time I was thinking, you know, the rehearsals were coming up, I was just dreading it. Just like, oh no, why am I gonna go do that? I'm supposed to be enjoying this. And so, you know, it's a job. Like, what is wrong with me? And I had a dear friend that encouraged me. It was like, you can drop out. It's okay. Like, it's not the end of the world to say no. But I was like, no, my name will be mud. Everybody will be like, you know, this guy, you can't trust him. He's not trustworthy. He's a diva. He's whatever, you know. But I said no. And oh my God, I was so happy.
Yeah.
Like, just like 100 pounds, like, you know, to my knowledge, there was no repercussions. Maybe my name got, you know, I was mud to some people, but I was like, then I didn't have to do months of this thing that I was like, ugh. I don't know.
Something that would have been public, I mean, it would have been out for until the end of time. So
I don't know how, I don't think that it was good enough to be, it'd be somewhere on some crevice of the internet somewhere for the end of time. Yes, that's true.
yeah, but even that, someone can find it, could have
I know.
found it, and
I know.
and just say, oh, this is the guy who did that thing.
This thing. Well, I'm definitely in some of those as well that I didn't drop out of. But this one I did.
Were you the lead character?
I was.
Okay.
I was, yeah. But to my credit, I didn't start shooting. That's really hard on a production. If you start shooting, then they have footage of you, and they've you know, hired all these crew to do it. I did it before it actually got into production that way.
Are there people there who still talk to you, or?
Not in touch with them anymore. No. Oh well.
Okay, if you're watching,
Don't no.
it was a necessary no.
It was. It was.
It wasn't personal.
No. Yeah, it was just not the project for me. And they were good people, just not, yeah, it was just not a good fit. And left me room. I remember there was another show that came up a few months later that I ended up doing that was really great, that I wouldn't have been able to do otherwise.
Oh, there you go.
So, yeah.
Sorry. Okay. Well, that's a good one. Final question before I let you go. Do you get to say no in therapy?
Well, yes. And it's important to know when to say no as a therapist. The big areas are saying no around things that I don't have specialties in. Is when and somebody contacts me to work with them about something that I am, you know, maybe have some passing knowledge in, but really do not feel comfortable in. I have an ethical obligation to say no.
Mhm,
And I do.
mhm.
And it's important. It's important that all therapists remember that, because sometimes they don't. And you get yourself into deep water.
Mhm.
You know, my big one is I'm not a specialist in eating disorders, and when people have pretty significant ones, I say no. I
Mhm.
need to refer you elsewhere.
Mhm.
Um, when they're kind of significant and persistent. And yeah, so things like that, I say no. Sometimes, if a, a client, a patient, a human is
Human, yeah.
is um, very rarely, but occasionally, there'll be moments in the work where I will be very directive and say something like, I really don't think that's a good idea.
Hmm.
Um, I tend to not work that way. I tend to like, well, let's explore that. Why are you thinking about doing this? Or,
Mhm.
but when it's, things around life or death, or, endangering a minor, things like this, I'll be clear, like, no, I want to be clear with you. I think that is a really bad idea.
Mhm.
Um, um, and still letting them know, if you choose to do it, I'll still be here and we can process this, but I want to be clear how I feel about this. Let's have no gray area. So
Okay,
yeah,
very interesting.
doesn't happen too often, but occasionally.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, well, good to know,
Yeah,
and good reminder for whoever is watching this and works with humans.
works with humans. Yes, yes.
Remember, you can say no.
You can say no, that is not cool. No. Mhm.
Well, Jacob, this was so lovely.
So
Um,
lovely.
what a nice conversation. I hope you've enjoyed it.
I really
Thank you for
have.
coming.
Yes, always talking with you is a pleasure. And thank you for having me. It was really, what a lovely thing. Yeah. What if I say yes? What a cool concept for conversation.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
And the reminders, send me pictures. But now I'm
please.
thinking, I mean, you cannot send me pictures of you with your humans in
I cannot
therapy.
do that. No, maybe I have a picture of me with some social work school friends. I could maybe do that. Some of my,
Well, acting, you can send me
I could
pictures
send
of
you
your
that. Sure.
when you were in college, acting, social work, Hunter
Okay.
College,
I'll-
anything of those years that
Okay.
we can actually share with the audience,
Share out the
send
world.
them my
Okay.
way.
Okay. I'll
And
dig some stuff up.
I wish you the best of luck in your new
Oh,
practice. You're so
thank
brave to
you.
open one.
Woo.
I'm sure that all the humans in need that come to you are gonna get exactly this: a
Oh,
lovely human being
mm,
um,
thank you.
who is willing and able to help. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Oh, thank you, Lucia.
Bye,
Yes,
Jacob.
talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.